Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Friday, April 19th. Now, I'm trying to work my way out of a minor emergency, so last stream started really late because of that. Today's stream trying to start a little bit earlier, not really achieving as early as I could, certainly in other situations. But also in last stream, we didn't actually accomplish everything, so today has a tendency to potentially be a longer stream. Apparently we have some new accessories. Now, interestingly here, this mate is perhaps the first one I've ever seen that actually looks slightly interesting, in that it is not just some kind of sci-fi creature that is very unique to Yu-Gi-Oh! And thus going to have a very limited appeal based on how much you know that character or care about that character. And then we have some other accessories that can be won through the Duel Trial Fusion XYZ event, which is now underway. So we have some extra gameplay to focus on today also. For the catch-up section, I once again must come hat in hand apologetically and say I really have not done anything for YouTube. I've been sitting around a lot waiting to see if there's going to be something that needs to happen, like whether it's a phone call or whether I need to do something. So it's a lot of what they call in the military hurry up and wait, and as such the only real things I've accomplished has been to watch, like, Ricky the Nicky, a movie starring John Cena on Amazon Prime, which I thought it was a kind of funny concept, but it definitely needed better writing, and it's a very dirty comedy movie that feels like it's going to struggle to ever be released on extended cable. And it didn't really need that. If there had just been better writers writing more family-friendly comedy, you could do the exact same movie better. There's one really long scene in the first act, and it really the scene goes on for so long, it feels like that it could have been a one act play. Okay, so we are, I think, in this group XYZ, and we're just going to select a loner deck and play that, and I'm going to throw caution to the wind here and not really try and learn what is going on. It seems like this is a loner deck around boxer characters, which, okay, thematically we now know what's going on. Questionably though, what is the gimmick with the card gameplay, which is basically unconnected to the visual card gimmick? I assume it's just XYZ summoning of characters. And that's probably going to be the card gameplay mechanic for each of the loner decks. You still very much see the standard cards that almost every deck has to play here in Ash Blossom and Infinite Impermanence, and Call of a Foolish Burial isn't one. Called by the Grave is one. The only thing I can really report upon, and so we're going to kind of go into news fairly quickly, is that I have seen a few more YouTubers talk about the Fallout TV series, and some of them I wouldn't really classify as gamers, some of them I would classify as gamers, or at least pretending to be gamers. As you know, there is a lot of that where you have people that claim to be gamers, but then they're really more YouTuber celebrities and they're playing one or two games it's kind of hard to make an argument. Somebody, if we take the most extreme example, like PewDiePie, it's kind of hard to make him an argument that he is a hardcore gamer. Obviously he's a gamer, and maybe hardcore is the key phrase there, but he's also a new father, and even before that he was just occasionally playing a few games, mostly Minecraft. Captain Sparkles, kind of same thing. He's very heavily into Minecraft and a couple other games. Of course, if I go down that route too far, very quickly I'll just be able to discount in my mind almost every celebrity gamer, because they gain their celebrity by picking at most 2 or 3 games, and that is that. They don't play random games like I do and play a game from beginning to end and move to the next thing, which is inherently, because of the way the algorithm is set up, a great way to not really succeed on YouTube. But yeah, the more I hear people talk about it, about the Fallout TV series, the more I kind of just feel like it is this weird crossover experience, and it's been here for a while, but I definitely am feeling it more now than ever. Perhaps it because the Fallout TV series has been a fairly good transition from video game to TV series, whereas everything else up until that point has been ignorable or completely disconnected. You watch the Mario movie, you watch the Sonic movie, there really is not a need to have any fandom for any specific Mario game or Sonic game. The Witcher TV series on Netflix definitely doesn't feel at all like it was really trying to get the fans of the video game series as much as it may have been trying to get fans of the book series. And in the case of the Witcher series, I'm not sure they were trying to get the fans of anything, and they were just trying to greenlight a project that already gave some exceptions. Cyberpunk Edge Runners, like, I haven't played Cyberpunk 2077, but pretty obviously that series is just set in the same universe, but would probably be a better comparison to something like Ghost in the Shell and other anime series than it would be what actually is in the game. And that's there definitely has been a long list, if you ignore large gaps in time in which we didn't have video game movies or TV series. There's been a long list of video game and TV movies, but they've all felt superficial and in no way really as good or connected to the video games. Whereas Fallout, and maybe this is me just being grumpy, Fallout feels like it honestly could replace the Fallout video game series. And a major part of that is uniquely the fact that Bethesda games are the way they are, and the release schedule of Bethesda is the way it is. The lesson I think that Microsoft needs to learn here is that they need to do some different things with Bethesda games, probably taking a lot of the development out of the hands of the Bethesda studios, and definitely getting away from the Bethesda engine that they're using. Starfield was the should, in my opinion, have been the last attempt at Bethesda to make an argument that in modern times Bethesda can make games the way they used to make games. And with the failure of Starfield, which I think we can mostly agree on, that was proven to be untrue. It's time to move forward. It's time to either have a Microsoft engine, if there is a Microsoft engine that Microsoft already owns. I don't think there really is one that would be really great for a new Skyrim and a new Fallout game, but maybe the Gears of War engine would do it. because you're also going to be changing a decent amount of stuff in the next Elder Scrolls and Fallout game if I was in charge in this theoretical, because it just doesn't work anymore, and it really hasn't worked in a long time, and mod support is not making them enough money. Bethesda has been bopped on the nose like a incontinent dog multiple times trying to sell horse armor and have marketplaces and monetize on mods, and it's just never worked, and it never will work. So it's time to abandon mod support on that case, probably go to the Unreal Engine, and it's time to make an Elder Scrolls game that is going to jump over a fairly large hurdle of not being a run and gunner and instead being a run and archery game, mostly, with also the ability to swing swords and do every kind of weapon equip that you could do in previous Elder Scrolls game. So that there is a big hump there, but I think the Unreal Engine can certainly handle that. But then they need to make games that are a little less open world, and if there is open world elements, it needs to be justified with actual content. No more big open fields with randomly spawning dragons that attack you, or randomly spawning bears. In modern time, people want more action per square foot. It's just the way things are. And if you go back and play Skyrim today, that there are a little too many situations where you walk for a little too long before something happens, or you walk and then something happens, but it's the millionth time that something has happened where a zombie Drockner character, whatever they're called, attacks you. Or bears are fairly rare, but raiders and humans are fairly common. The randomly generated caves that are then polished into being somewhat handcrafted caves in Skyrim, that has to be improved quite a bit, and I think, frankly, there's probably just, it's more laziness than anything at this point to even start with randomly generated things. Maybe in the next generation of Fallout and Elder Scrolls games, we'll have some kind of AI level generator program that is well established and ready to go, but at the moment, I think it is very much the case where we need to just have handcrafted characters. So if I activate this now, but yeah, modern Fallout and Bethesda games in general, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, I don't think we're seeing another Starfield game, need to have slightly less random item inventory garbage. That is pretty much an obvious case where the idea of having a bunch of random items and them all being in the real world and doing what is effectively just a simulation of what reality would be if you were in that scenario is just not really that appealing. Like, in the same way that we don't need to see the minutia, which is all it really is, in movies. We don't need to see characters walking down hallways silently. We don't need to see them driving on a highway for 20 minutes. We don't need to see them go into a bathroom and take a 20-minute bathroom break. It is just unnecessary things. In the same way, in Bethesda games, we don't need to pick up sweet rolls and have 100 sweet rolls in our inventory. And even the newest concept in like Fallout 4 of base building, even that gimmick is still very much from the perspective of running a simulation and adding minutia. And so the real problem is obviously the direction of those games, which I would assume is Todd Howard, but let's be generous and let's not make that assumption. The direction and the desire of what Bethesda games should be has to change, in my opinion, to be much closer to what a regular game is. Think about, say, Dead Space as a comparison. Dead Space also has a little bit too much to pick up, in that there are limited inventory items which they gamify so that you can't just fill up your inventory, which is, I think, very much a smart move. But yeah, instead of having just 1 or 2 units, instead of just having like 1 or 2 currencies that would have be used for bullets, there is about 3 or 4 in Dead Space. And instead of having just 1 currency for upgrades, there's kind of 2 currencies. One is the upgrade chips that are fairly rare and that thus feel unique, and then the other is the whoops, just missed out on an opportunity there. Oh well. The other currency is just credits, which credits I don't think actually let you upgrade anything, and I think are just for buying more bullets. But even at that comparison, which that's a fairly rough comparison, Dead Space 1, Dead Space 2, those extra currencies and that complication is miles away from the nonsense as far as over encumbered inventories in Skyrim, where there's just thousands of different items, most of which are fairly useless because even the systems to upgrade are fairly useless. Fallout 3, which is the Fallout game I have played, I think does fairly better on the upgrades, because at the very least in Fallout 3 you are upgrading your stats based on bonuses in your special stats. But even that doesn't really change the gameplay as much as I would like it to. Let's see. So yeah. The one thing that I would say the Fallout TV series has made me think about is just kind of the problems with the Fallout game series and Bethesda games in general, and where there is, it feels like, a fairly large chance here of, you know, Fallout being more relevant as a TV series than being relevant as a video game series. So anyways, that's pretty much all I've been thinking about there. Amongst the small amount of time. I'm still watching way too much cracking the cryptic and other Sudoku things, although increasingly also recognizing that I'm going to be very slow at learning and getting better at them. If I ever do get better, I may just never get better at doing them, and recognizing that cracking the cryptic's incredibly difficult Sudoku puzzles are inaccessible to the vast majority of people. You have puzzles where about 300 people in 30 days have solved them, and so that's just too small of an audience. Coachella happened, and I'm seeing that the new CEO, Neil Mohan of YouTube, was there, which I guess that makes some sense to be seen in the right places, but I'm not sure that YouTube itself actually did anything with Coachella. Maybe Coachella was streaming. I did hear, I think that Coachella was streaming multiple variations of multiple camera angles, but I don't know if that was really going through YouTube, and I'm not sure if any of that was actually based on anything exciting or new that YouTube is doing. If you have enough money, it's certainly easy enough to do video feeds that would go probably through NDI networking of the cameras, and you would just grab different camera feeds and make every single possible combination, streaming them all the same on different rack mount video streaming boxes, or custom built Linux operating systems on them, potentially. But yeah, I really don't have anything to say about Coachella. Video Games Chronicle says that EU Den Chronicle is moving forward with a sequel despite its creator's death. Yoshitaka Murayama passed away in February. There's been quite a few deaths lately, so apologies if I have forgotten that. I seriously doubt you would ever run into a situation where a successful video game series would stop out of respect from the death of the creator, unless they really knew that the creator was actually the credited creator, the attributed creator, was actually contributing all of the creative elements to the point that they couldn't even fake it and copy it and clone it. Particularly in video games, and increasingly I'm hoping people will slowly recognize this, they are very much collaborative efforts, and there really isn't a lot of reason why there would be one person who has all the ideas and then a bunch of mindless drones that don't have any creative ideas of their own just running the programming. Although we might see that with artificial intelligence at some point, where we can perhaps detect if an AI tries to do anything creative, or the AI just gives up on the idea of doing anything creative, and so you need one artistic human to have the ideas to tell an automated AI to program some form of art, and in this case a video game, from that. But we're not even seeing examples of it really going that way. If anything, it seems like the desire is very much to have AI do all the creative thought processing, which is what it's going to be the worst at. YouTube retweeted this, that YouTube is offering new Shorts ad options as it tries to steer brands to the feed. Here you can see examples of text popping up showing off the clothes that are being worn. So yeah, if you thought they didn't think they could squeeze more ads into YouTube content, think again. And yeah. Inherently right now shorts are competing. What the heck was that? I think this elephant is making some sound for some reason. Inherently, YouTube is inherently YouTube is competing against TikTok and other shorts providers. If there was a TikTok ban, then there would be less competition, and almost certainly you would very quickly see more terrible offerings happening as far as what YouTube short is. Yeah, this guy's tail waggles and makes a weird sound effect. My own experience with YouTube Shorts has shown some level of success, but on the face of it, I think most content creators were not asking to do YouTube Shorts. Most content creators that existed on YouTube prior to YouTube Shorts were not happy that they were added, and they're not happy that they're stealing audience, which inherently they are. There's really no argument against that. From longer form content. No, this is gonna work, is it? And I will say, at least in my example, it does feel like there wouldn't be anything that I would do with brand stealing, unless I can directly connect my YouTube Shorts, which are showing off video games, to a Steam link of that video game and get some kind of affiliate fee, which I think that is a about as fair, about as good of a way to advertise. Because if you are watching my YouTube Shorts and they are promoting a video game, directly linking to that video game makes sense. Whereas there really is no way I could cram any kind of other ads for other things. It would be just hardware, computer hardware links. If I ever got my smart on-air sign project finished and out the door, which is an increasing if, as more and more time is happening between the last time I worked on it and now. Same is even true for finishing up playing Hand of Fate 2. Like, I may very quickly want to stop playing Hand of Fate 2 in favor of just moving on to a new game. I do have a slight twinge to just play Fallout 4. Now would be the perfect time to put a lot of time into that, but also it's the worst time because I don't have the extra time to do that. Okay. What I'm trying to see here, I guess, would be if I could trigger something. Nope. Just save myself some time, I guess, by losing. Let's give it one more game, but I think... No, I don't even think we need to go one more game. Let's go ahead and swap over to a different deck and see if anything else interesting happens. Like, theoretically, not too much may change here, and that these are thematically different characters and creatures, but it still would just be XYZ summoning. And so unless there was a secondary trick to the XYZ summoning, I just don't know what the difference would be. GameDeveloper.com has an article here where CI Games CEO has lauded a record annual revenues only months after cutting 10% of jobs. Lords of the Fallen developer, that is. I don't think that they're really hiding it. They definitely aren't doing a good job of hiding it. It's pretty obvious that this is just naked. That all layoffs, for the most part, maybe there was one or two that you might actually justify because we've seen those companies actually struggle or actually go out of business after they tried the layoffs. But the vast majority of layoffs that have happened around the beginning of the year have been very much voluntary actions designed to just continue a massive amount of profits and do their very best to make what is eventually going to be completely unattainable amounts of profits. Okay, so level 10, level 10, level 10. So let's go with the highest attack, 3,400. Let's see. Apparently we can summon this now as an 11. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if there's really anything more to say about this story other than, yeah, these companies are not a friend to the economy and the working class, at least. And certainly if I had more time and felt more interested in it, in saying it again, I would say we need to probably put some limitations on who can invest or how much can be paid back to investors, shareholders, in profits, and adjust what is the general accepted accounting procedures, which is basically just lies at this point, down to being realistic accounting procedures. And it's not likely something that's just going to happen or correct itself due to a small bubble bursting. We need real laws in place and rules and regulations that can actually be enforced, instead of just naked capitalism going out of its way to going off the rails. But yeah. Video Games Chronicles says Netflix has announced The Witcher Season 5, says it will be the last one. Henry Cavill, I assume, is already out of the picture, so I couldn't even tell you who of these 4 people look sitting at this fairly opulent desk doing a press conference, I guess, and probably some castle that they rented out and flew a bunch of taking a bunch of news reporters to the castle, basically bribing them. Liam Helmsworth is taking over as Geralt, so I would assume that's probably this guy. 50-50 shot is this guy. But even at that, I didn't get past really the first season of the Witcher TV series, and so I couldn't even really tell you who these two female characters are supposed to be. You know, the real thought that it would be a new Game of Thrones, I think, failed, specifically because it was exclusive to Netflix, and certainly Netflix has several issues with it, particularly its crackdown on password sharing. I think lost it a lot of enthusiasm. Maybe it didn't lose that many viewers or lose it that many that much money. Maybe they claim it even gained them money, but there's just a big difference between turning something into the arcade and something that feels like an arcade, where it's free and fun to enter and look around, but sure, in an arcade you have to pay to play games, and then turning it into a strip club, which there's a cover charge at the door and then, or a 2-drink minimum, and sure, it may still be fun, but every ounce of fun is just coated in a different kind of sensation and a desire to drain more money out of your pocket. Amazon Prime Video, same problem. Like, when it was a free fun thing you were getting because you were getting free shipping for Prime, that's really exciting. When it starts adding ads and Prime Video subscriptions, or to have Amazon Prime in general, just goes up to a really high price, it starts to get that strip club feel, or cheap buffet feel, which, yeah, a good meal versus a cheap buffet, I'd prefer a good meal myself, to try to make better examples there. Hulu, aka Disney Plus, and probably ESPN too, is also going down that path where they're going to start cracking down on password sharing, and I couldn't imagine that there's going to be any large percentage of people that are going to mourn the loss of their access to Hulu if they get cut off. Like, Hulu's got basically nothing going for it. This guy's got a 6,000, I've got a 4,000, so I thought it was doing really great, and here they've found a way to wreck my strategy, unless there's some activation ability I can do. There's a free comic book day next month, apparently, according to Video Games Chronicle. And Far Cry, Pokemon, and Street Fighter versus Final Fight comics are going to be featured. Which, now, Pokemon did have a comic book. I'm not sure it really has one now. Obviously, Pokemon had a manga. I'm not sure the manga is running now. And yes, I'm going to say that those were two different things, because there was a comic book version for the West and a manga at one time. These all might be very old things. There's enough loaner packs here. There's effectively 9 loaner decks, so if I just do try all 3 of the loaner decks for XYZ and none of them work, then it probably does make some sense to try the fusion summon decks or the special summon, I think was the other class. Synchro Summon. But yeah, this is from Video Games Chronicle. This is also an example, though, of just this weirdness that I'm feeling a lot more in the past couple days. Maybe I'm just an old fuddy-duddy and don't like the idea of crossing the streams, but comic books, trying to use video games to get people to read comic books just feels ridiculous. It feels like, yes, there is probably a high amount of overlap between comic book fans and video gamers, particularly since we now kind of know video gamers are 60-70% of the population. If I was just to pick percentage, just pretty much anybody could be considered a video gamer because they play some kind of video game. But it just doesn't feel like that's the smart move. And it's obviously not the smart move because they've been doing this for years and it's never really worked. But it is the case, certainly, that video gamers, that comic book fans and well, it's not comic book fans as much as it's comic creators, just don't know what to do. Marvel and DC in particular, they just don't know what to do to grow their industry, and they've failed for decades to grow their industry any higher. And inherently a big part of that is just because it's books. Like, kids don't want to read books. Nobody wants to read books. There are bibliophiles out there, certainly, but that it is just a case that there is a high percentage of people who lie about how much they read, adults and children. They lie about how much they read. They don't want to read in those forms. Everybody's got busier lives. They're reading, if they are reading things, they're reading things off emails and touch screens, which has taken up all the energy as far as reading things. And comic books are in this weird situation where you're not even really reading like a novel. You're reading these cartoon pictures that have 2 or 3 sentences per panel. So even if you are a huge bibliophile, you wouldn't really like comic books. You have to very specifically be a comic book fan to like comics, and it's incredibly difficult, approaching impossible, to find out or convince people to be comic book fans from the beginning. A major part of that is because Marvel and DC really failed to give comic books to the age demographic that should get them, which is 2 or 3 year olds, 4 year olds, 5 year olds, 6 year olds, pre-kindergarten people should be your target audience in comics. And then there should be a market there that is much, much larger than the people who are reading Batman or Spider-Man. That should be, we've kept and retained an audience into teenage and adulthood, but that is going to be a small percentage. Every kindergartner should be getting comic books, reading comic books fairly frequently. And yeah, you can't really give them away for free, but you basically need to. But you have to have that kind of material that is age appropriate and reestablish yourself as being kid friendly. And DC does have some Scooby-Doos and Looney Tunes and things like that, but they don't ever promote it or really mention it. We don't even really get Scooby-Doos and Looney Tune movies. We get Batman, dark, gritty, live-action Batmans and Justice Leagues and Marvel movies for adults. Yeah. The huge success that Marvel movies had at one time, at no point even in the cinematic universe did they really try to make a kid-friendly Marvel movie. And that doesn't make a lot of sense at all. One that would actually go in theaters. Now, there are a bunch of cartoon movies and cartoons out there. It's just that they don't get promoted enough for your average Joe to even know they exist. Which that all just comes back to video games. Is video games have that exact same problem where they're not really targeting the younger audience except for Nintendo with Mario games. And so the idea of having enough games for kids is still a real problem. The Pokemon is going to be Pokemon Adventures Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire special, which includes a Splatoon 3 story. The Pokemon comic is a gold tier book, which means it's available in every participating comic store, so there's a whole tiering system. Apparently, free comic book is going to have 48 comics. I wouldn't be surprised if that is 48 comics are available for purchase at each local comic book store, because the free comic books are not free to the comic book stores at all. And so inherently they do say you should actually buy something and not just go in there and grab a bunch of free comics. Although a lot of local comic book stores, I don't think they'll even do a good job there. But it really shouldn't be a free comic book day once a year. It should be, hey, let's get the kids in once a week. There is a lifestyle to going to comic book stores where you need them to come in once a month at least, and that's just not really happening. But here you can see, like, the Far Cry comic here. You see what looks like a topless woman dancing with some side boob. You see fire and danger. This definitely is not kid friendly. Street Fighter vs. Final Fight is not kid friendly. And Pokemon here does look kid friendly, although I don't even know who these characters are. I don't think these are the new characters. I'd like to see what the other list is of the 48 other comics. Let's see, let's go to the campaigns store and see how this goes. Yeah, it took me to a store that immediately is asking for zip codes. It's the first of Saturday in May. Let's see. It's its own website. I guess it is somewhat interconnected. So yeah, we'll have to just use my magnifier to look at this and see what we have. We have what looks like Avengers or Fantastic Four Marvel comic. Looks like they're maybe fighting Skrulls. We have a Disney's Encanto, which looks kid friendly. Energon Universe Transformers, and then Hellboy. There is a real problem here with things being right next to things. Johnny Quest, which is not really relevant and weird to even try for. Scholastic Book Fair has done a great job in the United States of getting into the schools and convincing kids to spend money, or get their parents to spend money for kids' books compared to Free Comic Book Day. And Scholastic Book Fair basically, I don't think, gives you away anything at all. They've just found a way to promote books and collude with school systems to have these book fairs inside the school as a monument to capitalism, selling to kids who absolutely would not have any money at all under their own sense. There is a really good argument for Scholastic Book Fairs to not happen in schools or not happen during school hours. do we have? We have the Pokemon comic. We have a Ninja Turtles comic. Which Ninja Turtles never really were that kid-friendly. The Worlds of James Tynion the Fourth, which that's incredibly bloody and zombie. You have a Spider-Man comic. You have Unicorn Crush, which looks like it might be a girl-friendly, kid-friendly comic. And then we have The Witches of Brooklyn, which looks like it might be kid-friendly, unless, of course, you happen to be a parent that doesn't want their kids reading about witches, which there's definitely parents like that. And I keep looking through it as far as Free Comic Book Day from that perspective of kid-friendly, because yeah, there really isn't a lot of logic to try and lock in adult people by giving them free stuff. Like, if there is an adult person who wants a free comic, they probably don't have enough money or income to buy comics, and so they are a lost cause as far as capitalism goes. Now, if you were just trying to get your books in front of people, you might do that. It is weird that Free Comic Book Day is definitely designed around getting kids into comic book stores instead of comics being in libraries and being given away by libraries. Of course, how does a library afford to buy the free comic books to give away for free? At a certain point, it might make some sense to have like a 2-drink minimum or door charge at a comic book store on Free Comic Book Day. And it might make some sense to say free with the purchase of any other comic. But that's not really how it's advertised, and I don't think that's really how it's set up. But looking at those comics also, it's important to point out those are the gold tier comics that they want in every store. That's what they're trying to promote. That's basically nothing. It's doubling down after decades of doubling down to just get people excited about Fantastic Four, Ninja Turtles. A couple of them seem like they are wow, you can almost win in a couple turns that way. But yeah, I don't think Witches of Brooklyn or Unicorn Crush are going to be a hot new thing, or Johnny Quest or Encanto. There's just nothing here other than maybe the Worlds of James Tynion the Fourth, which I feel like James Tynion the Fourth is the name or pin name of a comic book creator. So this seems like this is possibly an anthology series from him. But yeah, none of this is new or exciting. You'd think this would be the time to reboot or premiere things, and you would want to really highlight that and promote that. And inherently, if anything exciting ever does feel like it's happening in comics, from my loose attempts to get into comics, it seems like it is always from an indie person, or there's just a 1 out of 1,000 good series that makes it to the end and has a decent ending. And even some of the series that I thought were good really kind of just fall apart, in my opinion. I think Why the Last Man is a kind of good example of that. And that there was just not that interesting of a resolution, and the story started to kind of run out of steam about halfway through. As far as the other games, we have an Archie Horror Presents Cursed Library Prelude. You have Asterix, a very old thing. You have Boombox 10th Anniversary Extravaganza, which I assume is just Studio Boom comics. These are the silver tier: Conan the Barbarian, you know, Cursed Divers. You have a Doctor Who here promoting the new Doctor Who character. I don't know if comic books, if Doctor Who fans are into comic books too much. You have Dying Inside, which looks like a new series. You have I Lie Popeye. Yeah, really old stuff. And just attempts at reboots of things that can't possibly be relevant. Popeye's a good example. You have Far Cry, Flash Gordon, something called Cannonball, which is some kind of cannibal horror story. Yeah, Gotcha Man, which Gotcha Man as a comic, and then they have Initial D right after that. So 2 anime / manga Japanese content now being sold in comic book forms. Investigators might be kid friendly. Max Meow is probably kid friendly. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the more early reading comic books are in the lower tier lists, in that they are just not required purchases by stores, and so you might go to a decent comic book store or a bad comic book store. Let me put it correctly here. This Marvel and Fantagraphics present Atlas Comic Library. A lot of these are just like really old things. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you went to a bad comic book store. This is really just a terrible way to present things. But if I click on everything, it's just going to go here. Monster High, I'm not sure it's still relevant. It looked like it was pretty popular for a brief second there, but that could have been 5-10 years ago. Night Librarian looks kid friendly. One Piece comics instead of the manga. Clearly there's examples here of what feels like comic book stores or Viz Media is trying to convince people to read Americanized versions of mangas or reprints or slight variations instead of just buying the original mangas that have been translated and reading them. And inherently, manga has a slightly better offering in that you get more black and white images and more story happening, whereas comic books tend to really be about 16 pages at most. They're far too short for a monthly experience, and so then you end up getting into a situation where you would need to get a significant number of these, say 48 comics in a month to even feel like you're doing a decent amount of reading, and even that isn't really going to work because you're only getting a small bit of each story and you're just going to confuse things. And this was definitely the problem I immediately recognized when I tried to get into reading DC Comics. I was with the new 52, and when it rebooted, I was like, alright, that's got to be a great time to start with just issue 1s of new 52 and try and read all 52 of their different comics that they were releasing. Very quickly I realized that that was not going to work, and yes, that was very expensive. Eventually I realized that if you get to trade paperbacks, that is the right move. Noticeably here, Free Comic Book Day is giving away small comic books they're not promoting reprints or trade paperbacks, which is really the right way to read comics, unless you just absolutely have to read it as soon as possible, and that's only, I guess, amongst people who have friends who would spoil the story for them. There's far too much to learn to try to even be a comic book fan. Romeo versus Juliet. Here you have a Snoopy and the Scouts comic. Some of these comics very possibly are straight up just reprints of things that have already happened. Spidey and his amazing friends. This could be the exact same comic or very similar comic to what was released in previous years. They could easily just make 4 or 5 of them and re-release the same 4 or 5 over and over again. But I don't think they really do. Disney, you would think, would be very heavy now that they own Star Wars and Marvel into comics, and Disney just doesn't really care. Notice there is no comic here for Mickey Mouse that we've seen so far, and we've almost gone through all of it now. Let's go ahead and click this just to get the music back, the background music. Yeah. Street Fighter versus Final Fight we already talked about. The Valiants. Inherently, there are a lot of independent comics people that make comics that are in no way going to benefit from being in Free Comic Book Day. And in particular, I can name at least 3 or 4 adult comics that are full of sex and nudity and violence, and yeah, the DC Black Label type comics even more extreme than DC Black Label actually is. We're not seeing any of that, but even at that, there is just this odd split between extremely young comics for somebody who's in kindergarten or early elementary school, and then extremely old comics like Doctor Who, which would only really be for Doctor Who fans, or Flash Gordon or Popeye, which I don't even know if there is a fandom there, or Gannibal for older fans. There is in no way a smooth transition of comics that happen to be both good for adults and kids, and then there's just a lot of weirdness on a lot of these where I really don't know if there is an audience at all. Now that we've seen all the silver comics, the gold comics continuously just still don't make a lot of sense. And that you're promoting like Johnny Quest. Why are you promoting Johnny Quest as a gold comic but Popeye as a silver comic? Or why are you promoting Disney's Encanto as a gold comic, but then you're promoting Spider-Man and Star Wars #1 as silver comics, since those are all owned by Disney? Or why are you promoting like this horror one and not like this horror one? Now, very noticeably, the 3 ones that stand out as far as Initial D, Gatchaman, and One Piece that are Japanese are all in the silver section, because manga has always, ever since it became somewhat available in the West, it has been eating the lunch of Marvel and DC. And let's be honest here, this is Marvel and DC that are effectively running the show here with Free Comic Book. It probably is it's part of Diamond, which is the publishing company that prints and publishes and delivers the comics, but Diamond effectively, to my understanding, is owned by Marvel and DC. Let's look and see who the sponsors are. Apparently there are no sponsors according to this page. Interesting. Alright, so I think that's more than enough to say about Free Comic Book, but it gets back to just the core question as to why even involve video games in this. Video games only highlight how poor the comic book industry is, how uninteresting comic books are in comparison to playing video games. You get way more for your value, way more for your dollar playing video games. The screen time concept that is around for this generation, which is probably a great concept, is about the only thing that can be used by comic books to say, well, if you're going to limit screen time but you need to keep your kids entertained, have them read. You should love for your kids to read. The problem there is parents aren't buying the argument that reading a few sentences in a panel and then looking at pictures is enough reading for the age group of kids that would be reading comics, and parents aren't really buying that comics are really good for kids' brains. Inherently, comics are the exact opposite of what Nintendo managed to pull off. Comics are the first generation of video games type companies, which is not even, like, there were predecessors that were even worse to Marvel and DC, but even now Marvel and DC is much closer to the first generation video game companies like Atari that had no quality control and would release garbage games like E.T. or release potentially controversial games like Montezuma's Revenge. I think that's the name of it, or of that game. No, I don't. I think that actually isn't the name of the game, come to think of it. But yeah, Nintendo snuck in with the NES in the West as a toy, and they had their seal of quality, and they heavily, for that first generation of NES games, made sure everything felt like it was for little kids. And that established in the minds of parents that Nintendos are a safe, acceptable form of entertainment, and that if you stick a kid in front of a Nintendo at a friend's house, there isn't going to be a cartridge game that would be the equivalent of being rated M for mature. And Nintendo stuck with that for a very long time. It's like Super NES games too. There really aren't any inappropriate TVMA type games. Nintendo 64 started to branch out with some third-party games that might have like cussing in the rap music or something like that. But it was very infrequent, and by that point Nintendo had already established that Nintendo games were going to be family friendly. To this day, I don't think Nintendo has ever released anything that was that immature or inappropriate. Perhaps their second party game, let's see, their second party game of that Zelda game, that Metroid game where she's walking around in a Zero suit for a lot, is about the most extreme thing we've seen. Like, yeah, there's small examples, but yeah, it's very rare. If anything, I would argue like Metroid Dread is perhaps one of the most recent games that is for an older audience, just because it's more difficult, and that is also still just a licensed Metroid game, which they didn't really care about. Mario games, though, have not gone into that realm of being inappropriate at all. Even when you look at like Splatoon, they're bending over backwards to make what is a first-person shooter not feel like a first-person shooter. When you get into GameCube era, there are probably a few more third-party games that are like skater games that have rapper music in it. There's BMX Triple X for GameCube, but even now those are extremely rare. Nintendo 64 had Conker's Bad Fur Day, which was rare. Certainly trying to get out of making more games with Nintendo is the assumption there, and that they were trying to break a contract, and Nintendo refused to let them do it. But the fact that I struggle to name even a couple, it just really highlights how well Nintendo did it. Now, other game companies didn't do that well. Very quickly, you had on the Sega Genesis Master System games that were either third party or first party that were more mature, and they were definitely pushing and promoting that idea. They also were advertising that idea, and so advertisements were perhaps way more risky than the actual games were for other consoles. And then when you get into the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, there's just like not any real desire there to come off as particularly kid-friendly. And certainly when you get to Xbox showing up, there isn't a real desire there to be kid-friendly. And modern PlayStations aren't trying to be kid-friendly, and even the Nintendo Switch isn't really trying to be kid-friendly. Nintendo has effectively abandoned that feeling once you get into the eShop. And yeah, PC games never had a desire to be kid-friendly. They were definitely where you would, anything and everything would be acceptable. But to wrap up my point, Marvel, DC really have failed to establish that at all. And they have other publishing labels they use for kids comics, but they don't promote it, they don't make it obvious, they don't make it easy to find. It's kind of crazy that at every single checkout aisle in a Walmart, you're not seeing comic books. You're seeing instead candy, and you're seeing gadgets, and you're just seeing batteries. And at pretty much every Walmart I've seen recently, the book sections are just getting smaller and smaller, and comic books are never in that section anyways. The direct mail and printing of media is not a good way to run a business. In fact, it might be more profitable to straight up just sell ebooks or put out comics digitally and sell ads. That's something that I could see like Google doing too. It's just saying, we'll make a platform for Google Books, specifically comics, and they do have that, but obviously not that many people use it. And we'll just run ads next to the Google Books, and then we'll do what we do. Most comic book creators that are creating something do just put out their comics almost for free. And they have like Patreons, or they will sell limited runs of direct shipping prints. There's definitely a misnomer in what comic book stores seem to be. They seem to be much more places where people go to play Dungeons and Dragons, which requires space and tables and just kind of a neutral Gathering space, and Magic the Gathering, which again requires tables. So their comic book stores are effectively activity centers that are the central hub of activities that other activity centers don't want to have. Anyways, that is more than enough about Free Comic Book Day, which really has very little to do with video games, even though they're trying to use video games to get some attention. I think this will be the last game I play today. Speaking of just unregulated games, Video Games Chronicle says the Epics Collection handheld brings California games and 5 other Atari Lynx games to the Switch. So here you have a topless surfer dude, two-piece bikini lady with the heads cut off, a skater dude, and I'm not even sure what this guy's supposed to be. But yeah, these are probably very old games. Yeah, you can see the cover art there is in no way really connected to what the actual games are. Games look like they are mobile games that are running at about 20 frames per second at best. Yeah. Yep. Great example here of just the uncontrolled way advertising went with old games, that they would just have live action people standing in front of this to show off what is effectively just a mini game collection of very pixely mini games. Finish this game. It's distracting me, to say the least. Now I can say about the last stream, since I did stream so late, that I only got about 3 views and the watch time was incredibly low. That isn't super surprising since I started so late, but it does make me wonder if maybe there was some other issue, but I'll never really know. Like my audio being messed up or something like that. I don't think that's really the case. I wanted to point out TubeBuddy seems to have been deciding to just post some generic things like time flies when you're creating. And I know YouTube is testing out a new subscription tab experiment that would show you even less things from what you are actually subscribed to. They very much always come from this idea that people are overwhelmed with the amount of posts that people who post and subscribe. For the amount that people's subscription feeds have posts in them, I don't feel that to be true in my experience. I have a lot of people I'm subscribed to. I want to see at least the title and thumbnail of every single thing they've posted. I'm not going to click on every single video, but I'm not subscribed to so many people that I can't scroll back down to yesterday and see where I last stopped up. The main platitude here is your channel might not be for everyone, and that's okay, which is probably the right attitude to take, but also not a very helpful attitude or statement for YouTube content creators who want to actually monetize even a little bit, because then you need your channel to be for a significant amount of people, not everyone. And if you have a channel and you only have 5 subscribers, you're in a bind and in a bad position. Particularly since I do suspect at some point in the distant future, YouTube is going to just start hiding and or deleting accounts that don't have enough subscribers. And it will stop being the carrot of you must have this many subscribers to be monetized, and it will be the stick of you must get this many subscribers and maintain this many subscribers for us to even show your videos or keep them in our hard drive servers. And yeah, these platitudes are not very helpful. Never underestimate the power of repurposing content. There's basically no good way to do that on YouTube. You're going to have to just manually cut up your content and repurpose it, and very little of it can be repurposed before it's just going to be repetitive content. Advertising or self-promotion clips wedged into the middle of videos, for instance. Not something that people really like to see. GameDeveloper.com says the Pokemon Van Gogh merchandise is on sale again online following scalping last year. The collaboration seemed to end in disaster when the Van Gogh Museum was swarmed by scalpers. These are interesting little bits of art, but I don't know where you really would put this. It is just going to be, do you like Van Gogh but you don't want to print a Van Gogh, but you like Pikachu or Eevee, so you want to have Van Gogh, have Pikachu and Eevee. If anything, it to me feels a little silly, if not downright insulting, and you're just not really properly celebrating Pikachu or Eevee, because that's not really how they look in that art style, nor are you properly celebrating Van Gogh by showing an actual piece of art he drew or painted. And yes, I know it's Van Gogh is the right way to pronounce it or something like that, but I'll just go with Van Gogh since most people recognize it in the West as that name. I guess I swore off talking about Larry Herb, formerly known as Major Nelson, but yeah, apparently he has done something where he's moved a bunch of Raspberry Pis off of one project and now has a bunch of free Raspberry Pis, and asking for people to give him suggestions on what to do with it. Which, yeah, he moved everything to an Unraid server instead. Which definitely seems to speak that he just has more free time than one would think. Somebody of that previous levels of success would have. But I'll leave it at that as far as my covering of him. I really should just mute him on Twitter and stop seeing his posts, that they are increasingly becoming irrelevant. And yeah, on rare occasion you do see that, where people rise to a certain level of success, perhaps through their skill, perhaps through their through luck, and after that point, though, there's just a slowing down or a lack of continuation, kind of retirement type slower actions. I would imagine Gabe Newell is probably something like that too. Imagine he's not really writing code or doing much at Valve or any of his other startups, and he is probably just in business meetings listening to other people giving him reports. And certainly that's where upper management can put people. Even if you did want to be an active contributor or creator, it's kind of hard when your day-to-day activities are listening to people talk in meetings and just talking on phone calls and things like that. Of course, it's also very possible that a lot of upper management people never contributed anything at all, and when they're left to their own devices, it does become more obvious that they aren't really capable of doing anything interesting. Inherently, I guess that's what managers would be, is just people who can manage but can't really do anything themselves. Oh yeah, let's banish 6 cards, why not? I don't know why I'm banishing 6 cards, but it gets me a 6-star monster. So that's another victory, but victories are getting me 100 points. So might be a little bit of a struggle to get to even this point, just because, yeah, they clearly want me to play for quite a long time, and they've set this up to last to the rest of the month, effectively. Now, I don't inherently feel the need to get this title, which is pretty useless to me, so I would feel fairly good if I just got to 2200, and we're 10% of the way there. Meanwhile, we're unlikely to have free time to play any ranked and get up to diamond, which I'd like to be able to do that. And then there is, I guess, just a lot of quests here. And certainly, I guess you could play to get each of these titles too, if you chose to switch sides. I've got the daily quest done, except for solo. Very often, I don't ever get the solos done in a month. That happens quite frequently. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Fallout 4 was Europe's best-selling game last week following the TV show's release. Again, I feel like it's important to point out that on Steam all the Fallout games were on sale, but obviously there is some enthusiasm around that. That being said, I can't help but say and expect that there are going to be some people who said, I saw the Fallout TV series, I really liked it, then I went and bought Fallout 4, and very quickly it felt like it was almost the exact same story, and that Fallout 4 was less interesting or less entertaining than watching the TV show. And so there might even be this bouncing back and forth of negativity where somebody goes and they really like the TV show, they find the video game is fairly different from the from the TV show, and in some important storyline ways a little too close to the TV show, and so then maybe they won't actually want to play the game in the long run, or they won't want to play Fallout 5, which is the big sales pitch here, is to keep people interested and willing to play the next Fallout game, or the next Skyrim game, even next Elder Scrolls game, which it would have made a lot more sense to make an Elder Scrolls TV show. I'm not sure that there's enough of a uniqueness to the Elder Scrolls series, though, to have something be labeled as Elder Scrolls instead of just having a generic fantasy game. You would think after Game of Thrones, Elder Scrolls TV shows would have made some sense. But yeah, I could see people even having a fairly negative experience in Fallout 4 and then not wanting to go back and watch season 2 of the TV series. Of course, it could go the other way too. It could certainly be a cycle of positivity where people love the TV show, they love the game, then they love the TV show season 2, and then they buy Fallout 5. There is a huge disconnect, though, between the Amazon Prime TV series and Bethesda and Fallout 4. They just have really failed to do anything that should have been done. Like, let's name some very basic things here. Why is there not a skin or a mod that is officially from Bethesda to make a character look like the main female protagonist in Fallout 4? You can play as female characters just fine, even though almost all advertisement shows the male characters, and this male character visuals here looks fairly rough. It is a slightly old game, but we've just got no mod to play as this character. We've got no in-game promotional items to get you to watch the Fallout series. There's no in-game extra mission to add. So there's just really no connection there. And Bethesda definitely has failed, short of just having a sale for games, they've really failed to cross-promote or promote their part of the Fallout universe now, when they knew exactly when the TV series was going to come out. So, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if you have, even though Fallout 4 was the best-selling game last week was just a really slow week. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if you still are at 95% of all viewers of the Fallout TV series are never going to choose to purchase a Fallout game or play a Fallout game. Of course, they could also run into the problem of going and trying to play Fallout 1, which would be a very different experience from what the Fallout TV series is. And the real choice is still to play Fallout New Vegas after watching the first season, without giving too many spoilers. In the timelines, as I heard one YouTuber kind of try and explain it, there seems to be some major problems with the timelines in the TV series. I think you could probably hand wave all of that away, just saying that it was a fake information. Certain dates, certain years might be totally wrong, just because people don't have accurate calendars and clocks. But yeah, I personally don't care that much about the Fallout lore to care if the timelines are slightly different or not, or if something is being implied as to what happened in the past, when it very well may be proven that it didn't actually happen that way. Like, I really don't care that much, because that's not really what Fallout's all about. It's not the deep backstory lore. It's about your own personal experience in the role-playing game. Role-playing as a concept in a TV show really doesn't translate that well, unless you're going to try something crazy like making an interactive TV show which at a certain point is just a video game. So at best, what you get in the Fallout TV series is you get to see the actors role-playing characters in a scripted experience, which would at best feel like watching a let's play of somebody role-playing Fallout. But yeah, I've talked about Fallout 4 and the Fallout TV series too much already, so let's move on. Octopath Traveler is now available to purchase on the Nintendo eShop again. It was delisted without explanation last month. The thought there was the publisher. It's been speculated that the delisting may have had been related to Square Enix recently acquiring the publishing rights for the game from Nintendo. Square Enix made Octopath Traveler, I believe, but Nintendo funded it as a publisher, and so maybe Octopath Traveler made its money back, or they reached that point in their contract to which the rights transferred back to Square Enix. But yeah, this is all very silent, so there's really not much more to report upon that's good information, other than it seems to be available for purchase again. Of course, had this been a case where Square Enix and Nintendo were working together well and communicating, almost certainly it would have never been delisted in the first place, or it would have been delisted for a day or a few hours, not an entire month. De Nouveau, according to Video Games Chronicle, has been removed from Ghostwire Tokyo. This is fairly common. You see games after a certain amount of period have De Nouveau removed because De Nouveau has a weird licensing fee where it charges more money the longer De Nouveau is left in the games for DRM. Yeah, and most gamers will tell you that De Nouveau is awful and hurts performance of games in their personal opinions, and most gamers will tell you that they don't feel like it actually prevents anybody from playing cracked versions of the game, or not buying the games, or it probably prevents a small number of people, but not a significant enough people to inconvenience everybody else with the lack of performance. Notably, De Nouveau is really the only DRM software people talk about and have an active hate for as far as gamers go. Nobody really complains about the DRM that is built into Xbox or PlayStation that are just run by Microsoft and Sony, or the DRM that's run by Nintendo, or the DRM on Steam run by Valve. Each of those have DRM systems integrated. Let's see, Child's Play Charity. I saw them on Twitter and I clicked on them. They're doing a PAX promotion here, trying to collect pins on a pin board. Do I have anything else to really say about Child's Play Charity? Though on their Twitter feed doesn't really look like it's much of anything else. Nope. So I will leave it at that. And then the Game Accessibility Conference, still promoting this game with its colorblind feature as its banner. Do they have anything new to say? Let's see, the full schedule for the Game Accessible Conference Europe is now up, including previously unannounced talks. April 22nd and 23rd, free to watch online or attend in person at Pullman Street Pancras Hotel in London. So yeah, I'm keeping an eye out here to see what this IGDA subsidiary has to say. Which, yeah, I imagine they won't say anything too interesting. I somewhat recently played this game, and this colorblind feature, while it works 90% of the time, it doesn't work 100% of the time, and really isn't the best way to address color blindness in any way. If you're colorblind, you still would have real trouble seeing some of these colors, regardless of whether there's a symbol in the middle of them or not. So yeah, I'm keeping my eyes peeled. I'm not sure if the IGDA at all is particularly valuable, considering we got that report in the last stream from the IGDA Jewish conference of their report of anti-Semitism in the video game industry, and in my opinion, I won't rehash it, that report was very lackluster and not very helpful or informative. Maybe that was the reason why I didn't get that many views in the last stream too. That is also a possibility, but I imagine it was just because I was late, and I'm gonna assume that and move forward. Apparently the actor from Raised by Wolves, which is not a show I've seen, Abu Bakr Salim is how I'm going to pronounce that, wants to play Cain in a Legacy of Cain adaptation. Now, inherently, if you look at Cain as a character, you're going to have to reimagine the way he looks. Otherwise, you're going to have somebody who is dangerously, like, underweight showing up, and that's not going to work. Although I guess you could just green screen the stomach and green screen the skins, but if you're doing a live action adaptation, I think you just have kind of the hair, the cape, the outfit, and you forget the blue skin and the claws and things like that. Maybe you have gloves that have claws on them, and that's it. Not sure how much of that really matters. Maybe a lot of it matters though. Like, I'm not a Legacy of Cain fan because I've never played the games, but I know there is a strong fan base of Legacy of Cain games, but not a strong enough fan base to obviously maintain sequels and get remakes and sequels, and so it is very much a case that it's a series that people are nostalgic for way more than they can be fans. Here the subheadline even points it out. There hasn't been a new Legacy of Cain game for more than 20 years. And I would imagine there might have been some revolutionary gameplay mechanics in Legacy of Cain that have just become fairly standard in modern games. So if you were to make a new Legacy of Cain game, it probably wouldn't be very interesting as a game, and you'd have to try and add new gameplay mechanics. And certainly there is a time before 20 years have passed where it starts to make sense to perhaps pitch your series as, I would say this probably would have been better as an anime or cartoon or comic book first, not a live action. I assume it's live action. This is something that was also just spoken in the podcast, which if you're an actor, you should be trying to get every job you could possibly get. But yeah, you definitely should do something with your series before 20 years have passed. That's kind of ridiculous. That's too much time. I could see taking 5, maybe even 10 years off, but by that 11th year, if you haven't done something, sell the rights of your property to somebody. Put it up on the chopping block and see if somebody else wants to buy Legacy of Cain and do something with it. American McGee's Alice is kind of an example of that too, where EA owns that and they're not going to do anything with it. Well, I think EA owns it. Whoever owns it, it's either EA or Ubisoft. but they're not going to do anything with it, so they should just put it up for sale and see if somebody else was willing to pay something for it. And technically, I think they would be willing to sell it, but they want far too much money for it. And even in that scenario, EA could have probably sold American McGee's Alice as a series to American McGee, and then he could have failed to make a new game, but then it would have just been even more on him as far as that failure, and less of EA looking like the bad guys. Of course, EA is probably still making money selling a few copies every month of American McGee's Alice Madness Returns, and wherever you can find the original Alice game, which I believe is actually inside Madness Returns. You just have to kind of launch it or kind of work with it, mod it a little bit to get it to launch, and then you can play the original game too. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com has this article that says the rushed attempt to rehabilitate Cities Skylines 2 has become a cautionary tale. Paradox and Colossal Order are struggling to rework Cities Skylines 2 after a tough launch window, and have now apologized for rushing DLC out the door. Yeah. I would assume what has gone here is that they're off the rails, and what is probably going to happen, my cynical mind certainly says what's probably going to happen, is that they are going to just continuously try to rush out content and make as much money as possible, and then just abandon Cities Skylines 2 completely. And they may apologize every step of the way, but they probably aren't. My cynical thought is they probably aren't going to change their actions in any way, because if you were going to change your actions, you would have done it before you launched. You would have just delayed. And we've had a year and a half of great times in which games could have been delayed and it wouldn't have really been a problem. And there really isn't a problem to ever really delay, other than just financials. But yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in Cities Skylines 2. I am lucky, however, I was never going to play Cities Skylines 2 anyways, because I really couldn't get into reading all the tiny text in Cities Skylines 1 looking at a TV 8 feet away. I just couldn't read it, nor am I that big of a fan of the simulations. I really haven't seen anything from Skylines 2 that feels like the game is much different from the first game. And it may very well be a case that whoever made 2 is not even the same people who made 1. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. So yeah, they're saying the rushed attempt to rehabilitate Cities Skylines 2 is the cautionary tale. I don't know what you can do otherwise, though. The truth here is, this would be a more accurate headline in my mind if it said the rushed launch of Cities Skylines 2 has become a cautionary tale, because it's that launch that has to be good, not a rehabilitation attempt or a DLC being rushed out the door attempt that solves anything. If the main game had launched well, they could have just delayed the DLC. So getting the game good in its initial 1.0 version is gotta be the #1 focus in game development. It's pretty obvious that that's the case. Let's see, Video Games Chronicle has an article here saying Todd Howard wants to avoid putting dates on Elder Scrolls 6 or Fallout 5, but the game director has reiterated that Bethesda's next game will be a new Elder Scrolls game. Yeah, once again, not to get back into it, I think Bethesda needs to be shaken up. If Microsoft is going to ruin any company, quote unquote, ruin any company, I think Bethesda and ZeniMax is the company to meddle and interfere with and ruin. Put Todd Howard as a spokesman, but give him no real authority. hand over Elder Scrolls to a new company that's going to make a Elder Scrolls game and a new engine, and just try to train everybody at Bethesda that you're not going to lay off or fire on that new engine and a new way of thinking. Even if we look at this screenshot, let me just highlight what I think needs to evolve away for a modern feeling game. Let's start with our character. He's got potentially lots of different variations on helmets. Maybe you only have a few of those. We probably don't do bracers. We probably don't do shirts, or you'll just have a generic form of armor if you're even going to do that much. There will obviously be plants in a modern game, but it doesn't need to be a case where you could pick flowers and do alchemy in so much of a way. In every single one of these buildings is probably a house full of hundreds of items, and you would want to bring that down into a much more manageable, more realistic number. Even the Fallout games, like the Fallout games being wastelands, still have a lot of things. I think you'd get the drugs down to 2, maybe 3 drugs at most in Fallout games, and that would be it. As far as Skyrim games go, the chickens wandering around in Skyrim, I don't think ever really did anything. They could easily be missing. I did notice in the Fallout TV series you didn't see a single child other than a baby. Pretty obviously they didn't want child actors around. But yeah, you have some trees and mountains. You definitely have that. So this was probably a terrible example. Over here is where you do the blacksmithing, I think, in this area in Skyrim. And blacksmithing, I think, probably should be very fast and very automatic, where you would just walk up to something and then hit a button and it would just automatically be blacksmith. And crafting a whole bunch of different items is pointless. Breakable armor feels pointless. Think about how a Skyrim compares to like the most recent God of War game. If there are different weapons and items in a God of War game, each one has its own name, it has special abilities, it's unique and special, where there's just nothing unique that you blacksmith in Skyrim. It's just the same things over and over again of different categories and classes. But yeah, I guess the bet also to ask here is how many seasons will the Fallout TV series be given? If it's willing to end on a pretty big cliffhanger every season, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets only 3 or 4. It's increasingly difficult to get to a 5 season, and I don't suspect that it's actually going to lead to any major conclusion per se. I wouldn't even be surprised if Fallout Season 2 tries to kill off or replace a lot of the main protagonist characters with new protagonist characters, because inherently, if it was a role-playing game, you always play as a different character every new Fallout game. Why wouldn't it be the same in a TV show? Obviously, they won't really want to do that, but if an actor doesn't want to come back, I could see them killing off a character. Certainly. I do think that the Fallout TV show is probably going to lead to the next Bethesda game having more celebrities doing cameos as voice actors, like there are cameos in the TV series. So we may very well have, if not mods that add Matt Berry as a medical droid voice for Fallout 4, we may just have Matt Berry voicing the medical droid in Fallout 5. And that's not really a spoiler to say Matt Berry, I believe that's the actor's name, does a small cameo as the voice of a robot medical droid. Here's Bethesda Game Studios Twitter, just to kind of highlight what they're promoting here. We have Starfield, and then Starfield, and then pinned tweet of Starfield with all these accolades, which don't mean anything at all. They're not worth the ink that they're printed on as far as actual gamer reception. I'd be interested in actually seeing what the reviews are on Steam for Starfield at the moment. And then the most recent tweet they have here is a mod for Fallout 4, where you can have an iBot as your companion. Yeah. And then they're talking about the Fallout 4 next gen update landing on consoles and PC on April 25th. I believe that's been delayed. Which definitely highlights that I should not play Fallout 4 until that next gen update is out. Steam Deck Verified isn't interesting. I really haven't done anything in the past couple days with my Steam Deck, and that is a little scary too. Then they are retweeting the Fallout TV series and all that. I could see them finding some way to make the ghoul human again and bringing this to be more of a human actor. I could see ending the series where these two become romantically interested and they settle down and this guy becomes the main protagonist. Is this supposed to be a rad roach here? I'm not even sure. It doesn't really look like one. Looks just like a regular roach. But yeah. While they are retweeting the TV series, that they are not inherently promoting the video game. In every single tweet here, there should be, don't forget to, you can play Fallout 4 right now. Fallout games are here. Yeah, the most game they've promoted here, Bethesda Game Studios, is retweeting Fallout, which is promoting a updated thing for Fallout Shelter. It's just really, really poor cross promotion. Here you have one bit of fan art. Then it's just like nothing at all. Yeah, they really are just not doing a good job of promoting their games. They had plenty of time to know that was going to happen. Here they're promoting a Skyrim character, or yeah, they're promoting Fallout Shelter, and that's basically it. And maybe this is the plan. Certainly that might be the case. Maybe the idea is that they are going to promote Fallout as a TV show. Maybe Microsoft wants to promote it as a TV show, and they want it to stop being really video game at all. Maybe there is just a level of distraction here where Microsoft thinks they should have like a TV production focus, and that they could take more games that they own and turn them into TV shows and stop spending as much money making video games. I don't think that would really work. You can maybe get a Gears of War TV series, but you're not going to get a Psychonauts TV series. You're not going to get a Killer Instinct TV series. And see, I'm back to like February 29th, and they were promoting Starfield at that point. So yeah, I'm just not seeing enough promotion of the actual game considering the TV show. Tweets are free. And they certainly could be tweeting more and just pushing people to buying the games, playing the games. It would have made a lot of sense to try and get certain people to let's play Fallout 4 before the TV show happened and promote the game more that way. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says GameDev.World is launching a global games fund to support developers in emergent territories. Which it says any developer anywhere in any language deserves access to funding structures and opportunities to make great games. Inherently, that's a nice concept. I don't know if that really works if you're running this fund and somebody's talking to you in a language you don't understand, or they are in a territory where the financial legalities of receiving funding or giving funding is very complicated. Like, you kind of have to do your due diligence. You don't want to just hand money to a North Korean company that claims they're making video games to then several years down the line realize you've just funded the nuclear development of North Korea or the military efforts of North Korea. Yep. Some of this financials may not make sense. A one-time 300% buyout of at time of signing of any funding deal, 100% buyout at the signing of funding a deal with reduced revenue share against developers' revenue no higher than 30% with a maximum of 500% of the initial investment, and then a high percentage share against developer revenue no higher than 50% until recouped, and the revenue sharing against developer revenue no higher than 30% after recoup. This all seems very much just like a publishing deals, although inherently each of these scenarios is making a big assumption that the game would ever come out or make money in the first place. It's pretty easy to agree to one of these, take all the money you get up front, and then disappear and never deliver a game. And then again, the laws of suing somebody and getting your money back in that case are going to be drastically different based on where you are. So yeah, we'll see as gamers probably 4 to 5 years from now if GameDev.World ever manages to actually fund a game to completion, to release, and if it actually is doing anything that is that different from other publishers. The Epic Games Store apparently is coming to iOS and Android. They apparently said that on March 20th. I've completely forgotten about that. They, weirdly though, are promoting Yooka-Laylee in the Impossible Lair, which is a fairly old game, which definitely makes me think that they really don't have anything to promote this week. Maybe it's the free game of the week, or maybe it isn't, but yep. That definitely felt like a blast from the past to promote that game. The Godot engine, I wanted to point out something that they retweeted. Yeah, they're working to make Vulkan support better. Vulkan support would be Android gaming, mobile gaming for the most part, although Vulkan might also be just part of the foundational Linux graphic driver, so it might be better support in general for depicting making games that would run natively on Linux. Weirdly, with the Steam Deck success, I am not really expecting some. Apparently, people are making logos for the Godot engine. I'm not really expecting to see a huge surge in Linux native games because of the Steam Deck. We'll see a small bump, certainly, and there already is a decent number of people that do make Linux native versions of their games, but DirectX is still very much the standard way to program video games, and to just abandon that completely to make a Linux native game, which is what I think you pretty much have to do, is effectively having to relearn quite a lot. I just don't think we're going to be at that point. Eventually we might get to that point where native Linux support works and you can just make games run on Linux that look as good and render frames just as well as DirectX games do on Windows. And certainly Windows 11 getting worse and worse will accelerate those kinds of changes. But there's a lot of legacy code, and Proton's compatibility layer can help with a lot of that legacy code, but that legacy code base is also legacy knowledge in the minds of a lot of programmers. And so retraining programmers or replacing programmers to make Linux native games is going to be a very slow process. 30-40 years if it ever happens. Unless, of course, all consoles become Linux native boxes, and that becomes the way all games are programmed. Video Games Chronicle says the K-pop star BB has released an official Stellar Blade song. This is Stellar Blade is a PS5 exclusive. I keep forgetting that it's going to be released next week, and it definitely feels like it is going to be the first big game, if not this year, for at least a long while. I would have to, like, technically some of those pirate games maybe are the first big games of the year, but also nobody's really talking about the pirate games at this point. I'm not even sure they're actually released. Although I think it's also important to point out here that there's just a lack of things to talk about, so we want to take a breath and not expect Stellar Blade to be the next best game ever. Like, it'll be great if it is like Nier Automata and really popular and even has a larger audience than Nier Automata, but I just don't think you're gonna get an audience as big as like Halo 1 and 2 were when they came out, because of the visuals and the style of Stellar Blade and the themes and the sci-fi fantasy elements of Stellar Blade. And so I just think there will be limited appeal. There will be a limited number of people willing to give it a chance, even if it is great. And yeah, I am not expecting that Game of the Year awards are going to be handed out to Stellar Blade by the end of the year, even from Japanese game developers. Maybe, if there's nothing else to compete with them, or Asian award systems might give awards, but almost certainly Western company awards are going to give out awards to Western game companies, just out of, for lack of a better term, regional protectionism. Excuse me. So yeah, I guess all I can really say is that this music video is here, but if I even hit play for a second, you wouldn't hear any of the audio, but even the video would probably get copyright claimed. So I would just say check out this music video if you want to. I don't know BB. I don't follow K-pop singers, and I know they come and go somewhat fast. So, yeah. Really can't say anything to that. It does perhaps speak. I do know that K-pop is big business in Korea. So if you have a K-pop singer singing a song for your game, it does highlight a large amount of big business happening there. But I question what would really happen if Stellar Blade became super successful and a matter of national pride for Koreans. Like, I don't know if there can just be a flood of other Korean game developers getting funding, developing new games, and then we would just see this boom of Korean games coming out worldwide and being successful. Even this story, as it has gone so far, feels very odd in that you have Shift Up, a mobile game developer who has made 2 other 2D, live 2D anime gacha games, getting funding from Sony and making a 3D, more CGI, Nier Automata type game. I mean, that's a big transition. I don't know if the other Korean mobile game companies, which is what I imagine is most of what Korea has, is just mobile game developers first, can make that transition and succeed. We don't even know if Shift Up is going to be able to do that. There is definitely still a possibility that Stellar Blade is just buggy or not good. Anyways, nothing more really to say, so let's move on. We already talked about the Fallout TV series returning for a 2nd season. If this is an image that was released for the 2nd season, then you might be able to take something from the background as far as what locations it is in. You see a Route 66 here. You see what looks like maybe a recognizable airport. I kind of want to say like maybe Seattle or Washington State, somewhere there. It might very well be a case that the 2nd season has these people chasing after the bad guy, and then the bad guy is working their way to New Vegas, but they went in a completely different direction. But even in that, the fact that the bad guy, managed to show up at New Vegas feels like a mistake at the end teaser of the next season, because you would have really thought that it would have just taken place and stayed in the Hollywood LA area and not walk hundreds of miles to a new area. That you kind of have to be hyper local around the Fallout stories, because if it is just a case that you can get in a power suit and walk hundreds of miles across a desert in a wasteland, and there's no radiation field stopping you, then the Fallout TV series could just go anywhere and tell any story, and it's just not going to feel like a Fallout game. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. The Universal Studios Japan's Donkey Kong expansion has been delayed to late 2024. I thought they had already done that, but I guess they had just kind of announced it and shown the concept arts. I know that the yen is not doing well. The economy in Japan is not doing well, so I could see why they might delay it for that reason, but I could also see it could be delayed for hundreds of other reasons too. I would suspect they probably are still going strong with the Nintendo World at Universal Studios in the United States, in Orlando in 2025, Super Nintendo World area, including the Donkey Kong Country expansion. And yeah, the Japanese Nintendo World is just smaller than the one in Orlando is likely going to be. Although they may be extremely similar as far as the rides and the layouts. It may be a one-for-one copy of each other, with just one being in Japanese and one being in English. I also know that the population in Japan is declining and continuing to decline, so yeah, there may not be that many kids around that would want to go. Although I'm not even sure right now if the Nintendo World in Japan that actually is open really is actually catering to that many young kids in the first place. It may very well be a lot of 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and 40-year-olds that are going to the Nintendo World in Japan. But yeah, well, there's really nothing else to say there, so I keep saying that. I'm trying to move faster, trying to not make this a 5-hour stream. I already expect it to be a 4-hour stream since I forgot to go through games that came out in the last stream. Apparently the Playdate devs have earned over $500,000 through the catalog. We still are getting a lot of reports and talks about the Playdate, when I feel like it's a really irrelevant as a device, as a concept, as an idea. That being said, I could see people making the exact same argument about me talking about the Steam Deck. I can see a lot of people going, it's irrelevant, it's too expensive, nobody has it, it's just not the game changer that you're making it out to be. And yeah, I can certainly see people feeling that way or thinking that way, or even owning Steam Decks themselves and feeling that way. I'm really can only spout my opinion there, and I do think that with a lot of help, a lot of work, and a lot of adaptation, which is 3 things it needs, is more people to be able to get Steam Decks and afford them, desktop mode to be polished, the Proton compatibility layer and gaming mode to be polished. With those 3 main things being improved upon, I can see the Steam Deck very much being a game changer, and it already has to some extent been a game changer in my mind. But I could also see Microsoft making something even better, eating the lunch of the Steam Deck. I could see it just always being too expensive and kids not being willing or able to buy a Steam Deck and the next Nintendo console and the next PlayStation and the next Xbox. I don't think any kids really should buy all of those, but I could see kids wanting the next Nintendo console to play Nintendo games, wanting the next PlayStation to play video games with their friends who all mostly have PlayStations if they don't have Nintendo Switches, or if they don't have both. Like, it is going to be through circles of friends that people manage to get Steam Decks and convince their friends to have Steam accounts and play games on PC with them as far as the multiplayer goes. If all of your friends are on a PlayStation, it's still very much a good sell to buy a PlayStation. Used games, I think, increasingly are becoming irrelevant in the pricing factor, particularly since Steam Deck, with used game savings from Steam sales, Steam sales save more money than buying used games do. It is the beginning of summer in certain hemispheres, it feels like, and I did also see slick deals around Woot.com selling refurbished air conditioners that connect and exhaust through window seals for $200, and they have a dehumidifier function, which, in fairness, any real air conditioner is going to have some kind of function that dehumidifies. It may not be very good, and any air conditioner may not be very good, but figured I'd shout that out. It is also the refurbished content hardware, so who knows how scratch and dented or how many pieces might be missing when you get it. Like, it should be workable and all the pieces should be there, but wouldn't 100% trust any website to do that. And then the last big bit of news I have here is that Xbox's PC games are heavily discounted in the Steam publisher sale. So Xbox Games publisher sale apparently is running until May 2nd. We'll look at that in more detail. Sea of Thieves 2024 edition is 50% off. And maybe that's an indication of how well Sea of Thieves is going, or maybe they just didn't want to make Hellblade alone discounted. Although some of these games kind of hard to justify as far as racing games that might get taken down. I'm always a little more cautious these days around racing games. Alright, well. So suffice it to say, there isn't a lot of major new news on this Friday. And I'm not expecting a lot of new news over the weekend. Nor am I really expecting to do anything this weekend. At best, I want to work on my Steam Deck and finish the code I was trying to run, or at least get it published and see if I can get it into the hands of other people who might feel inspired to make some revisions of the code and get it working better. Now, I'm scrolling down my Twitter feed just to see if there's anything new before we go through all the new games on Steam. Now, I believe this would be all the new games on Steam that I was going to make YouTube shorts on from, or at least consider making YouTube shorts on from Monday. Which, yeah. Increasingly, my macro is messing up a lot of times. Or my multitude of macros are messing up. So I don't 100% think all of the tabs from today that got opened are in the right order. Here's one of these RPG games that implies that there might be something lewd here, but seems like it doesn't really have anything lewd. And I kind of need to gain momentum here because I'm seeing a lot of garbage games. So, do I really need to even click through all of this? The thumbnails or the screenshots? Probably do. I want to give it a decent chance. Like this Witchcraft Survivors is on the follow list and is rated positively. I'm shocked that I need to leave that on the follow list because the screenshots don't do it any favor. And here we have search all aliens and then search all something else before that. Here we have what look like mobile games. Here we have just not good looking games. Some kind of baseball with animals concept. I'll give that a chance. And yeah, all I can do is apply an instant judgment, superficial look at games and maybe see where the momentum is with the reviews, if it even has any reviews. which is a big if for these relatively brand new games that have either just been released or put out. Here we have the most extreme version of a game that implies that there would be some nudity, but it doesn't seem like there really would be. YouTube has sent my multiple of accounts updates on their terms and conditions, and they are going to threaten to do more to block people who are using ad blockers watching on YouTube and Google in general. So my concern there as a content creator and who wants YouTube to be a somewhat successful platform for my own use desires is that at some point the terms of service might get enforced and updated to such an extreme that we start to see people's accounts get deleted and banned for ad blocking. Entire content creators getting their entire channels deleted or banned. And that would be very, very extreme and definitely have a huge negative backlash. But honestly, I think YouTube has had so many negative backlashes. I'm not sure that they couldn't weather even more negative backlashes pretty easily. This is a weird looking game, but it's spooky in the right way. And certainly I would hate for YouTube to find yet another excuse to accidentally delete my channel or somebody else's channel that's big and interesting. There is definitely a thought that YouTube has just hit a saturation point, and so it's not going to get any more viewers or any more ad revenue from viewers, so now it's just going to make its platform worse and worse. Which I guess if you contrast that to Twitch, which really is just not doing anything, in that one case Twitch is doing better. It just doesn't get worse and worse. We're seeing a few games here that might be something. Today might be also a good day to just try and do some follow list cleanup. Yeah. It's something where I can pick it up and put it down, and if I get interrupted, it's just not a big deal. And I constantly have this need to do follow list cleanup, and I constantly have no real desire to do it. And that is inherently, I think, the problem is that I don't think there's ever going to be a great way to automate or program your way out of doing something that you find lackluster. I can try my best, but follow list cleanup in particular requires a human to actually look at the games. Or does it, come to think of it? I could probably automate a process. It would go through my entire follow list, open every single tab, and then look at the positive reviews and compare the positive reviews to see if there's enough positive reviews or if there's enough reviews at all. And then it could run some very basic mathematical things to say, well, this game has been out for 5 years and it has no reviews, so it doesn't feel relevant. This game has been out for a year and it has 100% negative reviews, so it should probably leave the follow list. I could get what I probably would just want, which would be suggestions, not full-on mandatory actions. So what I need to figure out here, though, is where is the other tab? There should be another window of the same thing. And or I did cover all the games somehow and just forgot about it in the last stream, which I don't believe that to be the case. Well, everything here indicates to me that I have already looked at the games, and so that I must have done it, or I must have closed that window. Would be my guess. And so maybe I just skipped a bunch. Now, inherently, there's two things I can do here around that. I can take that as a good thing and just move on to the headlines, or I could get ahead of things, which I think I would prefer to get ahead of things. I already thought today was going to be a 4-hour stream, so let's go through all the games that actually came out today and get ahead of things. That would mean not having a rolling few days to look at games, which is a better system, frankly. It would mean games would get covered and looked at quicker, which maybe makes them slightly more relevant, although it is very much a case where relevancy is going to be extremely low regardless. Because still a large number of these games are not going to be relevant in the first place. Here we have a mostly negative game, and I think I can pretty easily see why. This looks like one thing and then plays like something completely different. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that negativity means I don't need to put it on the follow list. And then games that look like this can obviously be skipped. Now, the one thing you don't get by covering games as they've just been released is you tend to have absolutely zero reviews. So if there was even a slight trend of negative reviews like this, that's going to happen less likely. I'm starting to really question whether I would be willing to look up when that Borderlands movie was supposed to come out, because it feels like it's either a couple of weeks around the corner or way further than that. I would think that if there is time to change the advertising plan for the Borderlands movie, there might be some discussions going on right now to try and promote the Borderlands movie to look and feel like the trailer and the advertisements for it are going to be closer to what the Fallout TV series are. I think we are going to very quickly start to also think about a direct comparison of a 2-hour movie being the wrong way to translate a 200-hour plus game like Borderlands, if you want to play it for 200 hours, versus an entire season with a sequel already confirmed around a 200 plus hour game in the sense of Fallout. I'm gonna take this off because it's so negatively reviewed. It does feel like we are moving slightly in the right direction as far as the quality of games, in that this one's also mixed reviews. That's a shame. I'm gonna leave this on the follow list, but maybe not make a YouTube short on it. Well, no, I'll even do that. Might as well warn people away from a mixed reception game. I think this is supposed to be an Exit 8 parody if you were going to use completely different graphics and set it in what looks like a school, which is at least something different. Exit 8 itself is just a parody of PT, which at some level we should probably just should label what a horror-based spot the difference looping hallway game should be called. PT clone probably doesn't make a lot of sense to just call it that. Evil Sinister, perhaps too generic a name. I don't expect, though, we will ever hit a point where games just get good. The best case scenarios we're going to hit perhaps some summer blockbusters of summer releases, and then maybe it'll get a little bit quieter as far as new releases and good releases, and then the best hope is just for a strong release schedule around fall and Black Friday and Christmas and all of that. Honestly, it's more Christmas these days than it is even Black Friday. Biplane adventure. Increasingly, here we have a Korean visual novel. We're making YouTube shorts more and more around visual novels, or at least trying to. We'll see how far that really goes. I feel like there's a game already like this out. And I don't really feel like promoting these same merging games over and over again. I question whether they're really that relevant. The biggest problem with the idea of making yet another macro to go through the follow list would be that I would almost certainly spend more time programming the macro than it would take me just to go through the follow list. Same anime girl, it seems, every puzzle here. But yeah, in the long run, it probably would save me some time. Here we have yet another airy game, flooding steam. Same idea, bird flying around some asset flipped environment, collecting feathers or whatever. Not seemingly anything else than that. Here we have one of these Western visual novels where the animation style just feels a little rough, and by Western that does include possibly like Russian, although this one only supports English, so I would have to just assume that this is a what English speaker Westerner doing the animation. Nothing there to highlight really. That quality and that style I just don't think really has an appeal for most people, or anybody really. I don't think anybody really likes that art style. If it was done really well, that would be nice to see. If it was done really well, see where that style could go, but I don't know if it really can. Here we have yet another game that by the tags looks like it should be in the adult section, but is not in the adult section. That is another thing I guess I could do, is I could run the macro over the visible tags to see if any of them look like they're labeled as having adult content via the tags. Although I'm not sure what the real point of doing that would be, is other than to just maybe eliminate those games for being dishonest. This is another great example of a horror game that could be good or could just be a bunch of asset flip elements. We get a lot of those. And yeah, it gets a little exhausting going through two piles of games at once. The hope here would be that I wouldn't ever have to do this again, but inevitably I'm probably going to fall behind at some point and need to do it again. What's more scary is that if in the last stream I did look at all the games and it took such a short amount of time, that becomes a little concerning, because it means that it didn't take me that long to go through games, so maybe I did something wrong, or maybe that I just blacked out the whole experience, which that is somewhat believable, is that I would have gone through 20 or 30 minutes of looking at games and just completely forgotten everything. Yeah, there is definitely a possibility here that there's just a group of games here that I haven't looked at. If I look at this list though, I remember Rogue Samurai. It may just have been that there wasn't actually that many games that came out. Yeah, it doesn't look like there was that many games that actually came out. Yeah. Some of these are ones that came out before I ran my macro, but we went to basically this point So it doesn't seem like I skipped any. That being said, there are more games now to look at, because it looks like the macro and the opening new tabs in a certain order, it was broken. This is very obviously an adult game. It's, yeah. So I haven't been looking at adult games separately and spending any time on that, but pretty obviously we are still getting adult games getting made and released on Steam behind that hidden adult store section. And I'm gonna say no to this. This is just too simplistic of a game to really highlight or care about. But yeah, it still also feels like, from what I'm seeing, there's probably not an amazing new adult game that could be highlighted or should be highlighted. YouTube doesn't want me even talking about adult games, so it's just kind of nothing I can do there. Yeah. Okay. The fall list here still is broken as far as the macro. It's not opening any tabs. There is just an incredibly long list of games that I should off-screen double check and figure out. You know, this is blurred, so I assume this is an adult game. See how long it takes just to scroll down to the A's. And there's some games here that are already purchased, so I should double check and see what the deal with that is. And this would just be a lot of extra work, but it is a logical thing. The other logical thing to do, other than a follow list cleanup, would be, and this makes a lot more sense, schedule more videos so videos actually come out. But yeah, that certainly makes a lot of sense too, to schedule videos. It seems like maybe the blur is a new thing on Steam. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Just now I've gotten to the end of A's as far as the follow list goes. But yeah, blurred logo as a concept makes a lot of sense, but then you just can't click on the picture and make it pop up, which I very riskily did click on it, which would have then had it pop up. Imagine you would have to visit the page and then you would have to click continue after a warning. We're not at the end of the show, but tabs are all over the place. So very quickly, I want to show the SteamDB page, or what I hope is the right SteamDB chart. As far as 24-hour peaks go, see if we see anything new. I'm still seeing a lot of people on Reddit, Helldivers subreddit talk. We can see Fallout 4 is in the 11th spot, which weirdly I feel like it is actually fall down one spot, and so we might see that trend happen. And then I would assume Fallout 76 is falling downward too, if Fallout 4 is falling downward, if that is what's happening. And then I don't feel like anything else really to say or to talk about. I guess if I didn't want to wait for the Fallout 4 next generation update to come out, I could just play Fallout New Vegas. I'm not anticipating any remaster or anything coming out from that, although it would make a lot of sense if Microsoft just told Bethesda they have to make a remaster, or they have to let Obsidian make a remaster, since I think it was Obsidian that made New Vegas, and release it. It definitely makes a lot of sense that they should be secretly making a remaster of New Vegas while Bethesda is working on Elder Scrolls 6, sequel to Skyrim. Okay, see if we can get around to the rest of these tweets. Now, here's the weird thing. Yeah, I was definitely not wrong about the tabs being all over the place, so we have even more games to look at, but I don't think it's that many. And with any luck, I'm hoping that it will be only one or two at most that need to go on the follow list, because if that's not the case, I need to move all of these tabs and drag them over, and that's going to take extra time and be a mess. I found one so far. There probably is in Firefox some keyboard shortcut that would move a tab all the way to the left, but I don't know what it is. And as I'm scrolling here, I'm seeing too many tabs open. Maybe this is what happened, and that's why everything is out of order. Maybe it was a case where the games that I thought I didn't cover in the last stream, which would have been April 17th, were in this window, and as such I opened all the new tabs in an already existing window instead of a new window, which would explain quite a bit. It would explain the massive amount of games. What I need to do, alright, the hope here is this would work, is I need to start on the left side of this grouping of games still to look at, because otherwise I'm going to drag the rightmost object over the longest possible number of tabs, and that's not going to really work. I suppose what I might be able to do too is save myself some time, now that I'm thinking about it some more, and simply close the tabs in the middle. That might work better, yeah. These are all Matsu articles. Or games that put out press releases. I recognize covering these games. And then what was the reason that I had Exit 8 here being promoted again? It's because it was coming out to a new console, I believe. And because I thought that might get me a cheap pop with a YouTube short. Let's just be honest. Yes, these were the indie games that were announced. This game's already on the fall list, I bet. So I think we've gotten to a point now where we're going through regular games that are likely to be worse. My Lovely Dog Adventure, if it had a better name, I might be willing to say yes to it. I kind of like the idea of playing as a dog, but it still feels like it's just an asset flip game, so I'm gonna say no. Yeah. I guess now would be the time to release a Fallout clone, or maybe even a Skyrim clone, which the Metro series weirdly might be more recommendable at this point right now than slightly older Fallout games. 9 Realms and a 9 Realms prologue. I see what they did there. Got a chess simulator. Give it a chance. I don't think this looks good enough to say yes to. This definitely doesn't look good enough to say yes to. We really haven't seen a lot of those ball rolling Super Monkey Ball type clone games. I may have mentioned that I watched The Beacon 23 on or Beacon 23 on Amazon Prime. I want to warn people that that is actually just the first season, ending on a cliffhanger, advertising the second season in MGM Plus. That is something that really sucks about Amazon Prime, that very much noticeably is not often a problem on Netflix. I definitely, if I was going to pay extra money for a streaming service, would be buying Netflix over Amazon Prime. Then it would be questionable what else, if anything, I would get. A lot of that is going to come very much down to just what shows are things that you have to see brand new or are very much just always going to be exclusive. Disney Plus has that one advantage that if you ever want to see the Disney Plus content, you're pretty sure you're going to end up having to get Disney Plus for at least a couple of months. Whereas Hulu, in contrast, even though it's mostly owned by Disney, gets other people's content off and on, but that other content also goes to a lot of other places. There is still very much a thought that a lot of stuff or similar stuff that's on Hulu you could get free with just free ad-supported television channels, what they call the fast channels. which inherently, if you can have free ad-supported television over the internet these days, it's time to rethink how valuable extended cable channels really are, since those are non-free ad-supported television. This Kill It With Fire 2 is out and it's rated very positively. I know making a YouTube short around that will probably get me a few extra views. Yeah. So I have foolishly today accidentally gone through 3 piles of games instead of just the usual one. That being said, that does catch me up as long as I stay caught up, and does mean that the next time there's a stream we'll be going through the newest pile of games that have come out. And certainly I could have saved myself a lot of frustration by going through the games and pre-curating the games I was going to show off before I start streaming. That would be the logical do the work before the camera's on way of doing things. Of course, my attempt and style here is to not hide anything and just kind of show everything that allows people to say maybe they are interested in a game like this, even though I wouldn't be, and disagree with me as far as what I think should be curated into being YouTube Shorts versus what other people may think should be looked at further, or at least highlighted. And it certainly gives me something to do during the live streams. Definitely wouldn't be playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For 3 hours consistently otherwise. Or I'm not playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For 3 hours period, but that wouldn't have been an option. We have what looks like a live action and a half animated visual novel joke game. As best I can guess, I'm gonna not give it any more thought than that, however. See if that's something. We're seeing several of these like live action dating sims, visual novel type dating sims happen. So it seems like this is something that either Koreans or Chinese or both are trying to do, but they are not getting a good reception, obviously, one way or the other. For one reason or the other. It probably is too expensive to film branching path storylines and concepts there. Make a dating sim visual novel in that way with live action actresses. And it may very well just be too interactive or too complicated of a style of gameplay for something that is effectively a dating sim otherwise. And, yeah, inherently you kind of know that Valve is not going to let a live action adult game on their platform. They are clearly censoring that and will not allow that. So if you were to make a branching path dating sim game that ended up with live action nudity in it, it would be not allowed on Steam. So inherently all of these dating sim games with live action actors have to be uninteresting to that audience, to an adult content audience. And then they fall into being very close to the Chinese fake porn style games where the characters are good looking and maybe in slightly skimpy clothes, but that's as far as they can ever go. We have hit a point here where it does look like more and more games are back to being kind of poor quality. Here you have a shoot 'em up game. Give that a chance. Just because it has decent looking side art. Here we have Sunsoft is back. Which, is it in English? No. And that doesn't look good, and that doesn't look good. Reigns Beyond. Knights and Guns. King's Grave. We'll give it a chance. Alright, so that's puts me now, I believe, where I want to be. But I'm not 100% sure this is quite right. That's going to be the question. As far as can I make my way through the headlines, or are the headlines going to be completely out of order? I guess what I need to do is move again to the left side of the section of the headlines and work my way that way. We can do that in two different ways. We can go through all the GameDeveloper.com articles first, which I don't think I want to do that. Or we can just go to the left side of the Video Games Chronicle headlines first and then work our way to the right. Which means we would be covering older articles than newer articles, which is the right way to do it anyways. Anyways, my chart is here as far as trying to get trending data, and yeah, Helldivers 2 seems to be still falling downward, and not really seeing anything bumping up super high. Do feel like somewhere around here there should be a Fallout game that we should be able to highlight and click on and see, but nope, I'm not seeing it, which that alone might indicate that my system is flawed. But yeah, if my system was good, I feel like Fallout should be somewhere around here. But I'm not sure that Fallout's player base is really much, is above 100,000 anyways, so it might be that Fallout 4 is somewhere in this grouping, but it's just not visible amongst all the other listings. So here we have Steam's main page, which if there was supposed to be a Microsoft publishing sale, it's not even got the top banner. It's the second thing here. So let's look at that in a second. BMX Streets, I assume not connected to BMX XXX, because BMX is just a style of dirt bicycle. First person shooter fest is still going on too. Maybe we're not even getting a summer fest. It does feel like it might be that is the case. Subnautica Ultimate Collection, 70% off. Let's see if there's any Fallout games in the new and trending section. Harold Halibut, interestingly high on this. But yeah, as far as new and trending is concerned, not really seeing anything Fallout. And then Fallout 76 apparently is a top seller. Let's see what the popular upcoming games are. I assume a lot of these are popular upcoming because they just have a lot of wish lists on them. Yep. But yeah, weirdly still no hint even that a summer sale is coming. Let's check out the Xbox sales, the Xbox Game Studio Publisher sale. That makes a lot of sense, frankly, to buy some Xbox games right now if you want them. Obviously, if you don't want them, don't buy them. Because I wouldn't really expect them to go on sale very often. Makes a lot of sense to buy Hellblade. That just totally messed up. Since Hellblade Senua's Saga 2 is coming out. And some of these other games might be worth it if you were waiting off buying them. Although some things like Recore were never well received, and they never fixed them well enough that they'd be well received, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to buy that. Whereas some of these games are very old, like Ages of Empires. It definitely makes a lot of sense to own that. The Halo Wars or Halo Reach, it's going to come down heavily to how much you like Halo, whereas the Halo Master Chief Collection probably is relevant to most people. Flight Simulator 10 Steam Edition came out in 2014, so a 10-year-old version of Flight Simulator. Probably wouldn't be a terrible time to buy Gears of 5. And yeah, like I said earlier, I very much question if the next Elder Scrolls game shouldn't just be built on the Gears engine, if not the Unreal Engine. Weirdly, I guess they own now the developer of We Happy Few, and I guess the publishing rights have reverted back to that, so you can buy that. Even at that $15 without the DLC is probably a little expensive in that case. Fable Anniversary Edition. If you want to play it, you should probably play it pretty quickly before they do come out with a new Fable game, which they're indicating that's going to be the case. Psychonauts 2, for instance, here, though, is completely not on sale. Let's click on Obsidian Entertainment here for a second and see what they have listed here. Yeah. Fallout New Vegas is from Obsidian from 2010. That is certainly another problem, though, is that if you like the TV series, having to go back to a 14-year-old game because Bethesda won't let them remaster it kind of doesn't make any sense. This really highlights also the problem with Microsoft's acquisitions, is that you've got companies here, you've got licenses, you hand it to somebody to remaster, whether it's Obsidian or a third-party, second-party developer. Same could be said for Dungeon Siege 3. Even the South Park Stick of Truth is a 10-year-old game at this point. You could remaster it very minimally and put it on sale. You probably don't even need to do that in the case of the South Park games. But yeah, even in a remaster experiment to put New Vegas on a different engine makes some sense. Alright. So I gotta be careful about how I click here. Otherwise I'm going to send myself in the totally wrong place. But what I'm going to do is get to the left side of the Video Games Chronicle headlines, and we should be able to read the headlines and get through it. I still think headlines help my videos in some weird ways, perhaps not even in ways that help viewers, and I need to continue to program and work on the chapters. At some point chapters might become just more important and they might be the default thing, and then clips may not be worth doing at that point, but right now clips are working and chapters are not. So let's, and I like doing the headlines here, even though it is pretty monotone, dull reading out loud of headlines. It also gives me a focused way and a consistent way to go through the headlines where I don't have to really comment or make any extra statements if I don't feel like I should or need to. Although in most cases I do usually have an opinion to say. Anyways, Video Games Chronicle headlines, not Komatsu. Like, I'm on the wrong tab. Raid Anniversary Edition has been delayed to May. Pocket Pair CEO is proud that other studios are making games inspired by Palworld. Human Fall Flat 2 has been delayed to 2026. Next week's free Epic Games Store titles have leaked. This would be Lisa Definitive Edition and Industria. I've never heard of Industria. I assume that's what this game is. Might be worth checking out what that is. Denuvo has been removed from Ghostwire Tokyo. Octopath Traveler is now available to purchase on Nintendo eShop again. Cities Skylines 2 DLC is being refunded and made free after being rushed out. I guess that was a part of the story I did not catch before. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 arriving 2024 according to a leaked trailer. Fallout 4 was Europe's best-selling game last week following the TV show's release. The Pokemon Van Gogh merchandise is on sale again online following scalping last year. Playdate's catalog has sold 150,000 games, earning developers more than $544,000. First trailer and information on EA Sports F1 24 have been revealed. Baldur's Gate 3 studio Larian is working on 2 new projects based on its own intellectual properties. The Epics Collection handheld brings California games and 5 other Atari Lynx games to the Switch. MetaQuest 2 gets a permanent price drop to $199 for the 128GB version. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 officially announced with trailers and first details. Far Cry, Pokemon, and Street Fighter vs. Final Fight comics feature in the free comics book day next month. Netflix announces The Witcher Season 5, says it will be the last one. Fallout TV show returning for a second season, Amazon confirms. Universal Studios Japan's Donkey Kong expansion has been delayed to late 2024. The latest Spider-Man 2 update addresses disappearing save data. K-pop star BB releases an official Stellar Blade song. Todd Howard wants to avoid putting dates on Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5. We have some other Video Games Chronicle headlines still showing just how out of order all these tabs are. Like, obviously my macro has to start in a new window with no other tabs open, otherwise it just goes all over the place on how it does things. Kena Bridge of Spirits has been rated for the Xbox Series X and S. One assumes that means it's coming to the Xbox Series X and S. Eiyuden Chronicles moving forward with a sequel despite its creator's death. Raised by Wolves star Abu Bakr Salim wants to play Cain in a Legacy of Cain adaptation. Wouldn't be Salim, it would be Salim. Not great at pronouncing like more Middle Eastern names. Take a breath, move forward. Dragon's Dogma 2 update will reduce the infection frequency of Dragon's Plague. Prison Architect 2 has been delayed by another 4 months. Xbox's PC games are heavily discounted in its Steam publisher sale. Okay, so that worked pretty well as far as going through the headlines. It'll be a little bit harder going through the Gematsu headlines because there'll probably be some links to some other games, but we don't have that many of them, and then with any luck we'll be done in about 10 minutes. Splash for PS4 and 5, Xbox One and Series, and Switch launches May 2nd. This is currently already on PC, so if I click this, let's see where we are with this. It's Slash and Clash merged together as a title. So this is where this is going to get slow, but not that slow. Getting back to where we were. Darkest Dungeon 2 is coming to PS4 and 5 on July 15th. I don't think that there's really a need to once again promote Darkest Dungeon 2. It's mixed reviewed in the last 30 days, 75% overall. I think they did announce a new update, a new mode coming out for Darkest Dungeon 2, but I am not really interested in that at the moment. Yeah, I don't think I'd ever want to play Darkest Dungeon 2, so I'm not gonna make a YouTube short around this. Duckside public beta is now available. Put that on the fall list and give it a chance, even though it looks like it is pretty much just a silly joke game. Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted 2 is coming to the PS5 on June 20th. I think this is a VR game, would be my guess. V Rising Ruins of Mortium gameplay trailer is available on Gematsu if you want to check that out. Stellar Blade XBB collaboration music video Eve is available to watch. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Went too far. So only about 6 more tabs. Mystery adventure game Zombie Police Christmas Dancing with Police Zombies announced for PC. which that definitely feels like a made-up title to sound like it would be something translated from a different language. Let's see, English, Chinese, and Japanese in the languages. A open world action game called Unending Dawn adds PS5 version. It also has the Flame of Faith Everlasting gameplay trailer. It's also launching for iOS and Android, but not PC. So there's a question certainly there as far as what platforms it's targeting. You pretty much have to assume mobile first. We'll see if there's more news that comes out around this game, or if it has any relevancy at all. Otome visual novel Meiji Tokyo Rinka Full Moon is coming to the Switch and PC in 2024 worldwide. Does not have a Steam link yet though, so I assume it's set in the Meiji era. You can kind of tell that by the outfits that the characters are wearing. Biped 2 announced for all consoles and PC. I think we had seen this one, but maybe I ignored it. Multiplayer first-person shooter Arena Breakout Infinite has been announced for PC. Yeah. Problem with any of these games is they could become super popular, but they may also just never get enough attention. And sometimes advertising can help there, and sometimes advertising doesn't help at all. Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes sequel planned. We had already effectively seen that story, written different ways. If anything, it looks like Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes itself hasn't even been released. And I guess maybe Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes might be a spin-off of Eiyuden Chronicle proper. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they're two games or just one. It looks like it might just be one. Okay. So that's just going to bring us... Kabam is taking Marvel Contest of Champions to alternative app stores. Ahead of its 10th birthday, Marvel's mobile fighting game is leaving the iOS Android playground to hang out in other app stores. Interesting. I wonder if we might see a trend of that where games are not effectively being shut down because they don't really need to be shut down, but then they're just not being promoted or worked on, so they'll just put it on more of an archive third-party app store instead of paying the high fees to be on the Apple Play Store or the Google Play Store platforms. Also, with European laws and iOS being forced to support sideloading and other app stores, now would be the time to experiment with that. As far as other GameDeveloper.com headlines, not sure we have anything. there's apparently Overwatch 2 players who use unapproved peripherals could receive a permanent ban, which that screams that anybody with a disability using a disability controller might get banned, and that's going to be a major amount of negative press on a game that can't really afford to get more negative press. Modern Wolf lays off 6 staff in the studio restructuring. That's 6 people, not even in the double digits, but certainly if you were one of those 6 people or you knew those 6 people, that's still big news. Devolver financials show stable 2023 despite a quiet first half is an interesting headline. So it feels like there are several stories here we could have covered, but whatever. I think we just did. Ready or Not source code stolen in a developer hack. Be interesting to see if that does anything, or if the source code ever gets out there or gets used by anybody else. Alright, well, I thought this was going to be a 4, maybe even a 5-hour stream, and just by not having a lot to say and moving at a decent pace, this was only a 3.5 hours stream. Inherently, I imagine there's less games still coming out compared to what we might see around Christmas. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, and keep on watching. Thanks.